Welcome to the Engineering Construction Webinar Series for 2016. Today's topic is Advanced Modeling Requirements and Implementation. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available through our unlisted YouTube channel accessible via the Sustainability website. The address is on the screen. Also available there are quizzes which you can take to earn CEUs for attending these webinars. They are accredited in groups of 5. Download and send your completed quizzes to the email address on the screen on the lower portion. To receive credit, please include your AIA number if you have one. So today, in January, Engineering Construction Bulletin 2016-3 was released, which continues the requirements for using building information modeling and civil information modeling, BIM and CIM respectively, for our projects. Today we will be learning about the applicability of this criteria, the details of the requirements, as well as the strategies for executing them. For your convenience, you can download a copy of the ECB 2016-3 by clicking on the icon below the slides in the lower left of the presentation area. Today we have 2 presenters to speak with us for this webinar. Jason Fairchild, a registered professional engineer, is the leader of the CAD BIM Community of Practice for USACE. As such, he is responsible for the BIM policy and guidance. He has 25 years of experience with USACE, having proudly supported Civil Works design and construction mission for both the Vicksburg District and the Mississippi Valley Division prior to joining headquarters in 2011. Brandon Tobias, who you heard earlier, is a registered architect at headquarters USACE and is currently managing the development and implementation of advanced modeling initiatives for the military programs within the Engineering Construction Division. He has 12 years of experience with design construction, contingency construction, and BIM implementation. We'll be taking questions at the end via the live chat box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. There will be no need to call in by telephone. With that, I will now turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Eric. So today we're going to run through, as Eric said, our current status of our advanced modeling requirements and steps towards their implementation. So we have a few course learning objectives that fall in line with those of you wishing to get CEUs from this presentation, but more importantly, these are the things that we really hope are your takeaways from this and something that you can share with others who are not able to make the webinar today, and really add these to your toolbox of what it is that we mean by advanced modeling and what it is when we say BIM and CIM processes and how they relate to our design construction workflow. So these 4 objectives are: number 1, you should understand the project thresholds that establish applicability for the projects that you perform in your district if you are the design agent. Number 2, the requirements for design and construction deliverables associated with the use of advanced modeling. And again, in this context, advanced modeling is BIM and CIM. Number 3, have a basic understanding of the project execution plan, or the PXP, and the minimum modeling matrix, or M3, which are fundamental to accomplishing BIM and CIM projects. And number 4, just garner some understanding of the benefits of using advanced modeling. It's our agenda, which essentially Eric has already addressed, so I will move along. So by way of introduction, what is advanced modeling? And I created this language. This is essentially what we use in our engineering construction bulletin as well. Why are we taking what we had done with our old ECB 2 years ago, we essentially called a BIM requirements ECB, but we went to using the term advanced modeling because it is more inclusive. Not only does it address building information modeling or civil information modeling, but also really any of the information modeling technologies that are related to those technologies. So it's something that can apply to bridges or any other sort of project feature that not only has a spatial component, but also has, more importantly, a data component. So the advanced modeling processes in general support collaboration of all of your PDT members, but more importantly, it also supports your customers and stakeholders. And as I said, the designs that we develop using these advanced modeling processes and technologies contain a virtual representation of the project, that is, a virtualization of the form and function of that project, but also contains the embedded lifecycle information. And it's leveraging this information across the lifecycle that makes advanced modeling so valuable, and having a very clear strategy from the very beginning of your project, even looking back at the planning phase. If you are already thinking with a data management mindset, it really helps you determine at what points along the life cycle are these data elements populated or updated, and how do they flow through the process ultimately through construction to operation of your facility. So how does the data that you're considering at the planning phase ultimately end up in the owner's hands without having to have discovery, without having to have a site survey to find this information? If we put the information in at the right point in the life cycle, the effort to do so is minimized, and everybody downstream is able to leverage that. So with proper utilization of advanced modeling, there are several key benefits. It improves the design and construction processes. Not only the sort of standard arguments that you hear for BIM and SIM are that it is easy to do drawing generation, you have clash detection available between the different disciplines, but we're also starting to see, beyond these design benefits that we have seen for a number of years, construction industry is really starting to look at what they can gain with a coordinated view of all aspects of a project, what they can do with their subcontractors, what information can they provide for fabrication directly without having to generate separate shop drawings. So this is really starting to take some might say a disruptive but also a revolutionary approach, and is really starting to change the way that we do business in the design construction world. So yes, it reduces errors and omissions, but more importantly, it generates these information-rich deliverables. Because at the end of the day, when you're handing over your deliverables to your owner, to your customer, it is not that you expect them to take your BIM or SIM models and to maintain those and open those on a daily basis and try to glean information from them directly. In many cases, this is a training leap or just an understanding of the underlying technology is not really necessary for them. What you need to do is be able to prepare deliverables that they can use. So these intelligent deliverables that they were after the data in the appropriate format to ingest in whatever their target systems are. Perhaps they have a facility management system. Perhaps they have an asset management system. It is not on them as an owner to be able to access the BIM file directly and pull this data out. That is something that as designers and constructors, we would like to provide to them in an end-use format that they can fully utilize. So taking all these steps also ensures that we have higher design and construction quality, but more importantly allows the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to maintain its relevancy in the construction industry. We have long tried to be leaders in the types of information that we provide to our customers and to our stakeholders. And this is a critical point, much like CAD was 30 years ago, that technology is changing rapidly. We're really starting to see benefits across the board in all phases of the life cycle. We want to ensure that our workforce is the most technically competent it can be, and to do so, we need to try to do our work in the most consistent manner that we can. So that is why we are going down this road and trying to establish very clear requirements, but also try to lay some groundwork for standard contract language, templates to use for these project execution plans, and also sample formats of the minimum modeling matrix. All of these pieces work together to help us do our job smarter. So from my mind, it's not a luxury, it's not something that costs extra, it's something that's built in to today's design construction mission, and it's a necessity. It's essentially a swim or drown. This is something that we have to do. that industry expects us to do, and that ultimately the owners are going to expect us to be able to back up and provide them the kind of data that they need to make decisions, 10, 20 years from now about their facilities. We need to start laying that groundwork now and collating that data now. So to go through briefly some of the references that we had, and these are also included in ECB 2016-3. As previously mentioned, this is a reissue of the Engineering Construction Bulletin 2013-18. If you recall, that particular ECB did not set very clear deliverables that would be required at a minimum, nor did it establish really any sort of thresholds for applicability. So essentially, that earlier ECB said, thou shalt do BIM/SIM. It was sort of leaving it up to local interpretation as to what that meant, leaving it to the design team or the PM or the customer to help define the types of things they would like to see. So we recognized that we definitely needed to provide a little more information than that. And another reference that we included here is WRDA 2014, which specifically addresses advanced modeling, in that that is a responsibility upon the Secretary to promote and try to really gain some efficiencies to help make the design construction process not only more cheap, be accomplished more cheaply, but also to be more efficient and to provide essentially better results. So what we are doing with establishing these advanced modeling requirements directly supports WRDA 2014 Section 1034. Also, all of the guidance that we come up with for CAD, BIM, GIS, advanced modeling, whatever umbrella you want to put it underneath, eventually is going to wind up in our geospatial engineering ER 1110-1-8156. It was last published in September of 2012. There's an accompanying EM that goes along with that, 1110-1-2909. And the idea being that ECBs will be interim guidance and policy between revisions of the ER and the EM. So we will be entering a new revision cycle for this shortly, targeting probably a 2017 publication date. So we will take what we have done in the intervening 5 years and roll that up into this, into the new release that will be forthcoming. And so a lot of what we have seen for CAD, BIM, and GIS deliverables in the past has already been included in this, and we reference it with our new ECB. But these additional things that come along and anything that we develop over the course of the next year will ultimately reside in this ER or EM. It is not our desire to sort of be in this sort of volatile ECB-only type of guidance mode. It is an easy way for us to get the information out quickly, and especially when the information changes very rapidly, it's an easy way for us to update it. But we also are keeping in mind that we want to codify it a little stronger in the ER and the EM. So several of the resources that I've mentioned already, just sort of briefly touched on, the PXP and the templates, M3, are all available from our Technical Center of Expertise, the CAD-BIM Technology Center. And there's a link there for it. If you just go to cadbim.usace.army.mil to the top level, you'll be able to drill down and look at any BIM information, SIM information type things. And other than to sort of quickly mention this PIL, did you have anything you wanted to talk about on that specifically, Brandon, about how that functions as an exemption from our applicability?
Yeah, Jason, the reason that we cited that particular procurement instruction letter is because it specifically addresses capacity development and limitations in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have executed design projects using BIM and SIM in those countries. However, that particular PIL letter sets a different threshold for site acquisition, which goes to the Afghan equivalent of the small businesses. And because of the drastic difference in capacity between the small business contractors and AE firms in Afghanistan and Iraq and the larger contractors, we worked with the Transatlantic Division to set that threshold according to be consistent with that bill.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. So that essentially covers the background documentation and the references that we took into account when developing this latest advanced modeling requirements. But now talking a little bit about applicability. We started off very clearly that we wanted these requirements to apply to all USACE commands that have a military programs or civil works design construction mission in all CONUS or OCONUS locations. And specifically, we had a threshold which lines up with our sustainability reporting criteria in that projects that are over, that have a project scope of over 5,000 gross square feet and a programmed amount exceeding $2.5 million would be included. And like I say, with the projects in Iraq or Afghanistan, as previously mentioned by the simplified acquisition strategy, are not included. And looking at on the civil works side, it is simply projects that have a PI that exceeds $2.5 million. The mindset here is that this aligns specifically with what we're trying to report upward for sustainability, but also provides a sort of a baseline for a moderate level size project to be accomplished either by an AE and then reviewed by district staff, or also if we are doing in-house designs. This is the BIM and SIM are definitely transformative and not the kind of project where you want to wait until you have such a large project with hundreds of millions of dollars that you want to suddenly try to implement these technologies. It definitely has value even at the smallest project, and definitely helps you help gain experience by working on some of these smaller projects first. So we tried to come up with a nice, this seemed to line up nicely with other thresholds that had been established without seeming over prescriptive. So moving along into the policy requirements of that. So we do have a little bit of a difference when we're looking at the deliverables. So if we're looking at Army design or construction projects, not only do we want the design deliverables such as the PXP, the M3, the native format BIM and or SIM files, plus the design drawings that are produced from those BIM or SIM files, be they in Autodesk or Bentley format or whatever. We would also, from a construction standpoint, want to make sure that we captured as-built drawings and record drawings, and depending on customer requirements, any record BIM and or SIM files. It would be as a result of that. Now that's
Jason, the one thing that I would add is that probably should have gone ahead and put the actual record files on here, because as we get into a little more of the details in the next couple slides, that is an expected deliverable for the Army projects. Where we have other customers outside of the Army, that's where those deliverables may or may not be applicable.
You're absolutely correct. Keep me honest. Okay, so that's looking at essentially architect, engineer produced designs. For in-house design projects, we would at least want to have those same exact design deliverables that we would use for contracted design. So we're still expecting our in-house design teams to lay out and follow a project execution plan, for them to follow a minimum modeling matrix, because this forms a critical piece of the documentation of your design. This makes it very clear what your expectations were and what your plan was from the start versus what the files you end up with look like. It just sort of helps keep that process as transparent as possible. So that's for Army projects. So when we're looking at what I'm calling here non-Army projects, or projects that we're doing for other agencies, that sort of thing, at the very least, those design deliverable requirements are still in place, because there is intrinsic value and efficiencies to be gained in the design process, whether or not you pass along information-rich deliverables to the end customer or not, or even to the construction phase. That there are significant gains to be had simply using that piece of it. So that's definitely something we wanted to keep as required deliverables. And as Brandon had mentioned, in those cases when we're looking at these projects that we're doing for other agencies, the final deliverables, the record drawings, the native BIM and or SIM files those requirements and expectations would be coordinated with your PM and with the stakeholder, taking into account any agency-specific or requirements that they may have for advanced modeling as well. And one thing I did want to highlight, and I thought it was fairly clear in the ECB, but I've had some conversations with people since, and something I just wanted to verify is that when the design teams, either in-house or contracted, are designing, they should use the appropriate tools for the job. So there are definitely many BIM and SIM tools available from many different vendors. And sort of a preconception that I've been seeing happen a little bit is that what they think we are saying is that you have to choose an Autodesk, i.e. Revit, or Bentley Systems, i.e. EcoSim Building Designer, are your two choices for your software platform that you can use for BIM. And that's simply not true. So what we're looking for is that really any BIM platform, any BIM vendor that can meet our deliverable requirements are perfectly acceptable, especially when you're looking at some of the OCONUS type projects. There may be local requirements, or regional availability of certain tools in their local market space that's used by their local AE community that may be different. There are definitely others out there, Graphisoft and Tekla and others, and it really does not matter as long as the requirements can be satisfied and the deliverables generated meet our internal needs as well as the customers. It doesn't really matter what vendor you use as long as it's agreed upon prior to proceeding on the contract. So I did want to make that statement and just throw that out there. So I've been talking a little bit about the PXP and the M3. And what the PXP does is essentially shows which BIM uses or SIM uses are required for that particular project. And so what's some of the benefits of being very clear with the BIM uses that you expect up front? And typically when I'm talking about BIM uses, I'm talking about design authoring or using BIM for progress reviews, interference management or clash detection. These are all very common, but in some cases you also might be looking at coordinated views during the construction. Also, are we talking about record modeling? All those ones I have mentioned are required, and there are other optional ones beyond that. And we'll start to see that expand, I think, as the industry gets more on board with using BIM and SIM technologies outside of design and construction. When you start to look at it more in the planning phase, you start to look at it more in the operations phase, you'll start to see things like site analysis. They'll be using BIM and SIM. Cost estimation would be another one. These are all optional BIM uses at this point, but the capability of a particular contractor to be able to accomplish some of these optional cases also make for a better vote of confidence for that particular contractor's ability to meet requirements. Brandon, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, Jason, thanks. The one thing that I would add as far as the development of the project execution plan, this is something that's been a contract requirement for a few years now, so it's not anything that's new. But as this execution plan has been developed, we have been on a cycle of getting input from industry, so directly from the AEs that we contract to do design build work, as well as the AEs and the general contractors that do design build work, to refine the requirements of the PXP to make sure that we're being fair to them, we're being consistent with what industry requires, and to ultimately make sure that we're getting contractors on board that know how to use BIM and can demonstrate their ability to do that. Because we've seen some success with the discussions with industry, we want to make sure that we as an agency and as an enterprise need to make sure that we're keeping up with those trends, and we need to maintain our technical competencies as well. And because the PXP has worked well with contracted work, we want to make sure that we're doing the same efforts in-house as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's something that that we can benefit from regardless of who's actually accomplishing the design work. Touched on that. And as I had mentioned earlier, the template of the project execution plan is available from the CAD BIM Technology Center's website. There's a link here, but like I said, again, you can simply log in at the top level and search for it. And the idea being that this is completed by the contractor prior to the start of the project and must have review from the local district's BIM manager for acceptance. Sometimes through lack of education or understanding, these PXPs have kind of fallen through the cracks a little bit. So it's up to us to ensure that everybody in the design team and the PM team is in sync. And so hence having the BIM manager review these PXPs for acceptability is key. So along with the PXP, also have this construct of the minimum modeling matrix. And what the minimum modeling matrix, or M3, gives us is a standard way to talk about what our expectations are, not only from a level of development standpoint, but also for what the element grade will be. There was a lot of ambiguity. You start talking about LOD 100, LOD 300. There are some who don't even agree what LOD stands for. So, I mean, there's a varying definitions across the industry for this. So it became obvious that from USACE's perspective, we needed to be very clear. So that we would be talking about level of development, and then for each one of the items, each one, falling through our classification of all of the elements in a particular project, not only, do we want to define the level of development that's required, but we also want to be able to say, assign a grade for each one of those categories. So are we expecting a grade A, which would be fully 3D, including facility data? A grade of B would be 2D with facility data. Grade of C would be 2D only, parentheses, traditional CAD. Plus there are plus and minus modifiers to those as well. So it essentially creates a spreadsheet, so you have this nice matrix of what your expectations are. So it gives a way for the contractor and the design team to be able to very clearly say, all right, for these types of doors, here's what we agreed would be provided for this fixture, for this HVAC unit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this helps take a lot of that ambiguity and sort of contract interpretation off the table. Keeps those expectations very clear. And not only does it improve consistency, but it has reduced arguments further down the line between the A and the contractor, between who was responsible for what. And this is something that has had proven success already and has been, I think, very beneficial. Do you want to add anything on the M3, Brandon?
Yeah, Jason, I think the easiest way for me to think about it as a designer, we have AEC CAD standards that establish this is the level of quality that our CAD deliverables are expected to have. The M3 is an analogous document. Essentially, we're establishing those baseline expectations of quality for what our BIM and CIM files are going to have. And as Jason said, by having that clearly defined, it reduces the ambiguity when it comes to contract administration, but it also helps us to establish a baseline expectation as we continue to evolve the uses of BIM and CIM. We have a lot of ongoing efforts right now to include cost estimating, to include scheduling, things like that. And the only way that we can start to really utilize these platforms to their fullest capability is to have a consistent approach. That way we all know these files should all look the same and we should all have the same sort of data embedded within those files.
Excellent. And that is a really good way to think about it, because there are efforts underway in industry to determine what would be part of a national BIM standard. And while that has been a great sort of vision document and is finally starting to address some of the data requirements, it doesn't really approach the level of granularity that we need within the core to do our business today. And the M3 has been an excellent step towards laying the basis for that standardization. So I think that's a dead-on analogy. So just to talk briefly about execution strategies, in addition to the resources that are available on the CAD BIM website, that we also would like to highlight that for USACE, for many of the, if you're looking at Autodesk or Bentley System Tools, all of these vendors have online or on-demand or on-site training available for all of the different BIM sim tools. And we do have the benefit, at least within USACE, that online training is included as part of our Bentley contract. And there are a myriad of options, third-party options typically for the Autodesk products, all the way from books to custom courses to YouTube videos to there's really a very lively marketplace for training available in that way. But to also add, so I would say that being able to have some formalized training in the tools is important, but I think it's also extremely important to understand what the underlying process is and what the goal is, and being able to gain some expertise, even if maybe you're just working on a distributed team, or maybe you're simply in the case where you're able to review some work that is being done at another district outside your own. Perhaps you could get engaged in another, as part of a PDT to review some of these things. It's a way to better understand the process itself and this underlying life cycle data that's really fundamentally the important piece of what we're trying to accomplish with advanced modeling. And another specific thing that I wanted to mention was that when you're using a contracted resource and they have submitted their PXP on how they're going to accomplish BIM, there is a demonstration meeting that is required for them to clearly show that they have the capability and the understanding of what they've laid out in their PXP is something that they can actually accomplish. We have had some cases in the past where perhaps what was submitted on a PXP was a little over-optimistic or was reflecting a possible end state. If they were awarded the contract, then they would be willing to learn these skills or be able to do these things. But as we all know, it's very complicated and has a bit of a learning curve to it. So until you really have some practical experience, it's very hard to make guarantees about capability or what you might be able to accomplish within a specific time frame. So these demonstration meetings that are set up are a way for the Corps to have clearly demonstrated to them that the contractor is fully capable of accomplishing BIM, SIM, these advanced modeling requirements in a satisfactory manner. Brandon?
No, I mean, Jason, you hit on the point that I was going to make as well. That demonstration meeting really is a key. And as you are developing your contract language, I suppose that's something for everyone to be aware of. The current BIM contract language has existed in what has been called Attachment F, based off of the RFP Wizard. That's in the process of being updated into a UFC compliant 3-part specification. We're targeting the release of that in May. So, sorry, I think I might be breaking up a little bit. We are targeting the release of updated contract language for the BIM requirements in May, and that will be a 3-part specification. It's not going to be referred to as Attachment F anymore, but as you are developing your RFPs for either design-build contracts or design-bid-build AE scopes of work, you want to make sure to coordinate with your construction field office to ensure that they still have that demonstration meeting as part of their pre-construction work to make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as how your advanced modeling will be utilized and how that is going to be continued through construction activities.
Right, that's great. Thanks, Brandon. Well, that takes us to the end of our formal presentation. We'd like to open it up now for any questions the group might have, and I will turn that back over to Eric to moderate per his original instructions?
Yes, if you will draw your attention to the lower right corner of the screen, you'll see a white box with a send button next to it. Click your mouse in there and type away at your heart's content, whatever questions you may have. Hit the send button, and I will read the questions aloud as they come in for the sake of the recording and also to manage the order that we go through them. Don't be alarmed if I skip over your question. I might be trying to consolidate with some others to stay on a particular topic, or if it's not particularly applicable. So while we're waiting for those to come in, I wanted to remind people that on the lower left-hand side of the presentation area, down in the corner, you'll see a down arrow that looks like it's going into a little inbox, and that you can click on to get a copy of this presentation if you wanted those links that were flashed on the screen earlier. You can download that as well as a copy of the ECB 2016-3 if you wanted to read up on those definitions and things. Billy Tyndall mentioned that AIA has a reasonably comprehensive definition of LOD in their document E-202. If there's people that use the AIA documents out there. So if anybody else has any questions, I saw that on the side Kathleen O'Neill had asked a question, but I think that Brandon had answered it maybe. If not, Kathleen, feel free to post again. Otherwise, we have another question. Are we able to take a look at M3 now and how to edit and navigate? I take it you mean by doing a desktop share or something like that? We could maybe do that. I don't know. If we have time later, Jason, would you or Brandon be able to pull up M3? Maybe
I was going to say, yeah, if not today, that is definitely something I would like to get into a better demonstration of in like maybe one of our CAD BIM COP technical exchanges we do monthly.
Okay. All right, let's continue with questions, and if we have a copious amount of time left over, maybe we can do that for those who want to stay on. We haven't tested the screen sharing function, so we would have to see how that would go. So let's put that until the end of our time slot if we have time. Carl asks, how should the ECB be applied to renovation projects?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute there. Essentially, and this is a question that I do get from time to time. So if we're looking at this applicability threshold of 5,000 GSF, when you're thinking about that in terms of a renovation project, I think what we're really trying to say is that the project scope of the renovation itself would need to exceed 5,000 GSF. So we're not looking necessarily for someone to completely create a BIM model for an entire facility if they're simply looking at a renovation of one particular piece. We're trying to say that the scope of that, and which is not necessarily something that would not have value and maybe something that would be useful, but for purposes of discussion and applicability, what we mean is that the 5,000 GSF would apply to just the segment that's being renovated. So yes, you could use modeling tools to accomplish that, but only modeling those affected areas. That makes sense.
Right. And if we didn't mention it before, GSF is gross square foot footage. So and that may also depend if you're doing just one system. I mean, part of something that would play into factor would be kind of common sense. So another question was, SIM is fairly new to civil works projects, and they're wondering how many districts are currently doing SIM for civil works projects. Do we know that out there?
Eric, hey, this is Brandon. Hold on just a second. There was one thing that I wanted to add to comment about the renovation projects.
Okay.
And Jason touched on it, and this is something that we have discussed before. The thing that people need to remember when it comes to those renovation projects is that you need to write your scopes of work specific to the work that's being done. Meaning, if you have a facility that's 30,000 gross square feet and you're doing an office renovation, that's 5,000 gross square feet of that, and is over $2.5 million, then this policy does apply, and you need to use BIM to develop your design documents and have those deliverables. But that should be scoped and written with specific regard to the project that is being completed at the time. Meaning, you don't necessarily have to do full BIM for the entire facility, especially if you're only doing work on a sixth of what that building is. Right now, what we're focused on doing is getting as much data as possible within the confines of what the scope of work is going to be. And something that I think people don't necessarily think about is right now, any data is better than no data. At the end of the day, yes, we want to have full BIM models and BIM files for all of our facilities, for the entire thing, but you shouldn't exceed your project and the scope of your project by requiring that a full BIM be provided when you're only doing a portion of the work.
Right, Brandon, and also you want to touch about the logic if say you're doing a 10,000 square foot area of a building, but all you're doing is a fiber optic system or a subsystem rather than a wall-to-wall renovation.
If that's less than $2.5 million, I mean, the area that you affect may be more, but if that fiber optic system is only $1 million, then this doesn't apply. You don't have to do that.
Okay. I'm hoping that answered the question, and I think that, so getting back to SIM is fairly new to civil works projects and how many districts are out there. I see that one person responded that Louisville District has just started working on the first HSS project using Revit 15. Brandon or Jason, do you know of other districts on the civil works side that are using BIM or SIM, rather?
I know when I was in Portland District last year, they had a full SIM model of fish ladders that they were designing for construction on the Columbia River, and they indicated that this was not new to them. They've been doing this for quite a while. So off the top of my head, that's at least one civil work district that I know utilizes SIM already.
Yes, and I would add to that, because that is true, but I would also add that, there are other SIM tools that do not necessarily emulate what we're talking about with traditional BIM either. So use of tools such as En-ROADS to do levee design and levee enlargements and those types of things could also be considered using SIM as well on those horizontal projects, because you're determining cross sections, you're calculating borrow area, you're looking at total volume of earth that you're altering. Those are all essentially SIM type technologies. So I think what we would find is, though we haven't called it that in the past, that there already is, to some degree, a pretty good widespread use of SIM tools within civil works, at least laying sort of this basis.
Okay. Are there any more questions out there that have not been answered adequately, or anybody have any follow-up questions? If not, since we have about 14 minutes left in the hour, Jason, I just passed it back over to you. Would you be able to click on that fifth icon from the left on the top row that has the blue gradation that says Share My Desktop and go into M3? Or is that something that really wouldn't work out right now?
Oh, we can sure give it a go. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I have not tried to share my desktop with this either, so I'll be curious to see what happens.
Oh, and then yes, to answer Joe's question, we are recording this. We will be posting it on the Mercy site. That was that first slide, the sustainability site, and or on our unlisted YouTube channel. So keep an eye on that. It'll usually follow about a week from the webinar after it gets done processing, and I usually have to do some editing on the video and swap slides around and things like that. It gets out of sync. So we do hope to have this available for future viewing.
All right, I have tried sharing my screen, and it doesn't look like this is working. Hold on.
Yeah, I still see the question slide. Do I need to open a new window?
Oh, it's giving me a Java.
Oh.
I have to have Java 7 U45 for this to work. I'm trying to verify that now. So okay. maybe not. Stand by.
All right. And let's see what else we got going on here.
Okay. Everyone see my desktop now? Can
I'm
everyone
not.
see
Oh, there it is. It's coming. Yes, I see it.
Okay, great. This will be an excellent test. Excellent test to see if even I understand how the M3 works. So essentially on the M3 there are 3 tabs. So it has some very clear instructions on the first tab, which essentially steps you through what we're talking about as far as how LOD is defined and these element grade definitions that I touched on earlier. So the idea here is that you take all of the elements that are in your project would appear in column B here under element ID. And what you can do, and you have Omni class or Uni format, even master format. So let me see if I can zoom in.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah, because I can barely read this. I'm sure you can. All right, so this is a specific example looking at structural. So you can see here for level 4 wall foundations is included. We expect a level of development of 300, which I think if I pop over, I was thinking we had this defined in the instructions. Here we go. So looking at the different LOD definitions, LOD of 100, it would simply be a cube that would show, like for a pump, for instance, would show the clearance areas that were needed for maintenance, how it would be oriented, and sort of where its clearances would be in with respect to other disciplines. And then you get into a little bit more of approximate shape and approximate location and orientation with LOD 200, plus you start applying information such as, we're using the pump again as an example, what size pump it was. And then looking at an LOD of 300, which would be required for really for design construction, you get very specific about the spatial attributes, and you have also attached this non-geometric information to include essentially your nameplate data, the exact size that you would require, what clearances are required, those types of things. So that is the 3 categories of LOD. And if we look down here at the element grades, as I kind of briefly went over earlier, an element grade of A is fully 3D and facility data. A grade of B would be 2-dimensional only, such as maybe showing a door and its swing, but also including all the facility data. Or perhaps the element grade of C would be 2D only, aka regular CAD line work. So keeping those LOD definitions and those element grade definitions in mind, when you go back over to our specific example here, you simply have these columns. So you can say, well, I have wall foundations are within my project scope. They require an LOD of 300, and also we have an element grade of A for the design model, and we want A+ for the record model. And that A+ would indicate that we would essentially capture the specifics about the material that was installed. So you can get very, you can have your brand, you could have your thickness, all of those things that are sort of categorically defined at design time, but then become very specific once they're installed and put in place. So that's why typically you see, looking down this list, that the design model has a slightly lower element grade required than what's required in the record model, because in the record model we're expecting for a particular chiller, for instance, you're going to have the exact make, model, serial number, and all of those details on hand once the actual equipment is put in place. So this gives you a way to just simply go through for all of the elements that appear in your project and be very specific about what's needed. So in this particular case, wall foundations we care a lot about. We need to have a lot of detail and specificity. But looking down this list a little bit at like foundation anchors and underpinning, all we really need to know is where they are and the rough area that they encompass, and traditional line work is acceptable. We don't need any additional details than that, either in the design model or construction model. So you essentially go through this and do this for every element within your project. Does that make sense? Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Brandon? Did I totally butcher that?
Are you muted, Brandon? Where is he? Oh, I think we lost him.
Oh, well, maybe silence means consent. So.
I think he. Also, I don't see his name on the list anymore. So.
Yeah,
anyway.
But as a follow-up, I would like to say that we do plan for a future monthly technical exchange with the CAD BIM COP to go through the PXP and M3 both in more detail, and we can have the developers of those documents can be on the call and can demo and answer any better, specific questions. Like I say, I'm just looking at it from a user standpoint, but as they would maybe have a better, more insight as to why some of the decisions were made to categorize some things in certain ways. So hopefully for the time being, though, that was a quick little run through for you.
Okay. Kathleen responds again. She understands the need to provide decision criteria for using advanced modeling, in quotes, on projects funded with O&M, repair projects, but I think it would be good to provide additional decision criteria for the extent of repairs, as the use of BIM can be a problem. There's a limitation on the amount of text you can enter in the text box, by the way, so be aware of that if you're typing in long questions. So also I want to bring up, there was somebody from the Air Force that asked about the when the videos are available. I posted a link directly to the YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search on it, you won't find it. It's unlisted. But if you follow that link, you should be able to get to all of our videos. And like I said, I'll try to have this up as soon as I can get it downloaded. And if it's recorded okay, I can post it right away. If it got out of sync, it's been an evolving process with the DCS system, as those of you who have been on our webinars for a while are aware. But hopefully we'll be able to get that posted pretty soon. You can go right now, however, on the YouTube channel, and I believe you can sign up for notifications as things get posted, subscribe, or whatever they call it. Okay. Well, last call for any further questions. I think we've covered quite a bit here. It was nice to know that the screen sharing kind of worked. It was a little jerky on my end scrolling around, but was able to follow it well enough, I think. Otherwise, I want to just basically thank Jason and Brandon in absentia. One of our colleagues posted that he got kicked off, I guess from the network or something. So we will continue later with our next webinar. So keep looking for our announcements for that. And thank you again, Jason and Brandon in absentia. And everyone have a nice day. I will leave this venue open for a while so that people can click on that link and download the presentation. If you wanted the link to the Mercy site, the sustainability site, or the YouTube channel, they were on those first two slides, which are part of this presentation file. So if you download the presentation, you can go back to those sites as well as the BIM and SIM sites that were mentioned during the presentation. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and have a very nice day.